Kobi, great to have you here. You are a legend, icon, one of the top architects in Miami. You've been here since 1988. Where were you born? What's your early story? And we'll talk about how you got into architecture.
Thank you, number one, for having me here. It's a pleasure to sit here with you, with the great American flag behind you. I was born in 1962 in Israel, and I grew up there till sixth grade. And then my family moved to Minneapolis, Minnesota. So we moved in from the Middle East to the Midwest.
Okay.
And those were important years because sixth grade, junior high, high school, university, I spent those important years in my life in Minnesota, in Minneapolis. And it was, for me, very good to grow up in the heartland of the USA. For me, it was a good place to grow up. Went to school with people like Pillsbury and Cargill, and there's great companies there. Archer Daniels Midland, Honeywell, Target. I worked in Target, stocking the shelves during Christmas at T2, which is Target, second Target in Knollwood, St. Louis Park. I grew up in St. Louis Park. I went to St. Louis Park High School, junior high. That's where and then I went to University of Minnesota, Institute of Technology, and there I received my diploma in environmental design, and then I received another degree in architecture.
You said you worked at Target. You also worked in landscaping early on?
Yeah,
As you were a kid?
I
Mowing lawns?
I always worked, yeah. I used to mow lawns. Back then, until the mowers came out, they were automatic, where you can pull and they would go by themselves, right?
Yeah.
We had push mowers. But it was good exercise.
Yeah.
And then your shoes get all green. I worked in gas stations. I worked in St. Clair gas stations, the ones with the big dinosaur. They're big up in Minnesota. And I worked in the winter, so they give you Sorel boots. And
In Minnesota, that must have been cold.
yeah, it gets a little chilly in the winter. But it's good for ice fishing and snowmobiling. It was good. And I was younger. So when you're younger, the cold does not affect you that much. So it was nice.
Isaac Toledano was also, he was in landscaping. And a common theme that I've noticed among entrepreneurs is even at a young age, we started working. We took an interest in business, whether it was mowing lawns, it was working at a gas station, maybe waiting tables. You had this passion and curiosity to get into business. So you went to architecture school, you got your degrees. What brought you to Miami?
What happened is I was in Minnesota, and my folks lived in Lauderdale by the Sea,
Okay.
which is a part of Fort Lauderdale on Commercial Boulevard. And they were sending me Miami Herald ads, meaning they can go and get the Fort Lauderdale newspaper, they can get the Miami newspaper, they got the Miami and the Fort Lauderdale, but the Miami had an ad in it for an English firm.
Okay.
And that English firm was building all-inclusive resorts and hotels in the Caribbean, in the British West Indies, as they call it. I got the ad, I called them up. They said, please send me your resume, your portfolio. And back then, there was no email. So you take your portfolio and you Federal Express it. There was Federal Express already. I Federal Expressed it to them, to 925 Lincoln Road. That's where they were, in the Sterling building. They got it. They liked it. And then they said, we're going to send you a ticket. Go to the counter in Minneapolis at the airport, and we'll pay for your ticket to come down. I said, great, free ticket. So I came down to Miami and stayed with my parents. And then I went to the interview. I came with khaki pants and a white shirt and a blue tie,
How people dress back then.
That's how people dress, especially architects, right? And with the blazer, and came in, and they were sitting there at 925 Lincoln Road. I remember it like yesterday.
Yep.
Lane and Simon, and they had their legs up on the table because it was Saturday. I came on a Saturday. They were drinking beers, Heinekens.
Wow.
Yeah. and they said, smoking cigarettes.
Of course.
And they're saying 1988, and it's the summer, right? I come in with a suit, and it's hot. And they say, oh, here comes the redneck from Minnesota. That's it.
Wow. So they knew.
So they knew, and they liked my sketchbook, and we met, and we had breakfast, and then we had a lunch, and there's you have to understand, it was Miami Vice and Scarface days, so there was no action on Lincoln Road, and there were people sleeping outside. There was a Cuban little cafe right on that same corner that back then was there forever, and that's where we got our food from. And we had a great meeting, and they offered me $30,000 a year. To give you perspective, but I had to be there in 30 days.
That doesn't sound bad for back then.
A lot of money. The other jobs I had offered was I worked for John Cunningham in Minneapolis. They offered me 20.
Okay.
I was their employee number 9, and John Cunningham is one of my architectural heroes, right? And then I worked, and then another office was a guy called John Anderson, who was the head designer for an architectural firm from Baltimore, Maryland. They were designing Cocoa Walk here in Coconut Grove, and he was the head designer in the company, and he asked me to come down, and they were offering me $21,000. These guys offered me $30,000.
How old were you?
I was 25.
Wow, that's pretty good.
I graduated university on my second degree when I was 24. Finished architecture school because to get a diploma for architecture takes 5 years approximately. And then I sat down to take the license exam because I worked during college and during university, and I accumulated the hours that you need to sit down for the exam.
Okay.
So I sat down for the exam, and the exam had 9 parts over a few days. I think it was like 3 days. And I took the exam, and I passed it all the first time.
So you were a natural.
I don't know if I was a natural. I think, I think I was a grinder.
Okay.
I wasn't the brightest bulb on the shelf, meaning there were always people who got better grades than me, who caught on faster, and then there was me who was always interested in grinding it. Oh, I like the history part of architecture. Oh, I like the construction. I worked in the construction. I knew how the plumbing worked with the electrical. I knew why people were doing things in a certain way.
Grinders, and this is the long game, and there's no shortcut to success. So there's, as you know, and you're smiling because you know the ups and you know the downs, and it's a long road, and you've built your career over multiple decades. So you were a grinder. What inside you, Kobi, drove you to work harder? Like psychologically, what was it that you knew you had to work harder than the next guy?
I think in my nature, in my work nature, I like to please people,
Okay.
right? So I used to work in El Torito's restaurant as a barback, right? And if somebody didn't get the chips or the sauce right, or didn't get the margarita fast enough, even though I wasn't the waiter, I was helping the waiters and the waitresses. So the waiters and waitresses loved me. And I was helping the guys who cleaned the tables right afterward, the busboy.
Going over and above.
Some people say going over and above,
Doing
but
extra.
helping other people
Okay.
helps yourself.
Yes.
And so if I would help the waiters and the waitresses, they would like me. At the end of the night, guess who got the most tips?
Right.
They did. Hey, Kobi, come here. Thanks for helping me out. Here, thank you. And what I saw was that there was, people always tried in their way to be grateful to you if you were good to them, if you hold the door open for them, if you make sure they can get on the bus, if they can get on the subway, right? If they can get out of the car. When you're older, I had a client, and they were older. I always had the pleasure of working with elderly, help them out of the car. Simple things like that make a huge difference. Because at that moment, it becomes personal. And when you when somebody sits down and the table is a little dirty and you clean it, they look at you. And they look you in the eye. and then you look them in the eye, and they say thank you, and they're happy, and they smile. That's what they remember, that flash, right? And that flash is important because I like to make people happy because it gives me happiness. It gives me satisfaction. And so, and I'm not saying everybody's good, right? There's a lot of assholes in the world. There's a lot of people who try to find ways to connive and get under and sneak from the back of the line to the front line to get on the bus, And that you need to be perceptive. You need to be able to sit in a room and listen and watch and feel and read the room, right? And then that would give you the strength if you're a good individual, because then as an architect, it's not just designing the building. You design a building, it's white. Oh, I like black. That's personal. But if you design the building so it makes sense, so it's good for the community, it's good for the end user, the people who live there love it. The neighbors say, wow, it's great. It gave us this and we didn't have it before. And that's important to do.
So you were serving other people early.
Always.
And you've continued to do that, and that's...
Every second of every day, I believe that is the best thing that you can do for yourself selfishly, to be happy in what it is that you are doing. It is always look, and you're talking about the long game. I'm talking about, in order to get the long game, every day, find out watch. What do other people need? And you do that. You never know who the other person is that you're helping to cross the street, that you open the door for, that you're helping along. And it's not time, but it's being there at the right second and being the pinch hitter.
Over and over and over. And I know you...
Always.
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 You follow this.
Always.
And in business, especially today, people have options. People have options for architects. People have options for lawyers. People have options for doctors.
Yes.
And this is, for our viewers out there, this is really important to understand and appreciate, is that people skills at the top, and you interact with a lot of the most successful people, having designed buildings for these developers, worked with everyone over the many decades. What would you say about their people skills compared to other people's?
Look, I think that most people do not have good manners.
Right.
They don't have good people skills. But I think if you can get with most people most of the time, you will be very, very successful. Meaning I deal with people and clients that most other people say, I would never deal with that person. I would never deal with that. And I deal with a lot of people like that. And I thrive with them because it's important to understand the differences in the personalities and the characters of the individuals, because they change. If I deal with a government group today, that government group might not be there in 5 years, in the city, in the county, in Durham, in Wausau, in the building department of Copper Mountain, Colorado, or Crested Butte, Colorado, right? And so you need to be able to deal with, and it's not just being able to deal with people in your own country or your own state or your own city. You need to, I work in Abu Dhabi. I work in Russia. I need to be able to present this in Sochi to the mayor and to the governor, who are two different individuals from two different backgrounds, and explain it to them in English, which is not their mother tongue, yet they understand it. But if you present it in a slow fashion, where you are giving them the sound bites, what they need to hear, what they desire to get out of this project, they feel comfortable. It's like you coming to El Torito's, and this is the first time you've ever landed in Minneapolis, Minnesota, off of a plane, and you don't speak any English. And I'm serving you. I know how to make you understand that this spice is hotter than that one, that the drink is good, that the chips that arrive at the table are warm. The hospitality element is key. That's why I love designing hotels and resorts. That's why our
You have a hospitality component to to your firm.
Yes.
You always, when I come and we bring the team, you guys are very hospitable, and it's a part of your personality.
Yes.
And it's helped you be successful.
It is a way of life.
It is.
Why? Because I don't look at it for my own selfish needs of being successful. When you come to me, to my office, and I take you in, and I do the same thing for my employees. They come in the morning. Sometimes they're hungry, sometimes they're thirsty. Their dog died. They had an accident. You know, they're worried about their mom or their sister or somebody who has cancer. People have issues on a daily basis. So when they come to my office and I offer them a cup of coffee and something to eat, some water, it gives people an opportunity to breathe and relax and set their mind straight, set their emotions straight. And I believe that people act a little bit better when they're not under stress and duress.
Right.
And when they enjoy the environment, because my first degree is environmental design, it's not architecture. And if they enjoy the environment, then the layout is better, the floor plan is better, the room layout is better. My ability to get to the spot, to the restaurant and sit and have a better view, and there's no bad seat in my restaurant, then I can make a killing.
Right.
Right? That's why Thomas Keller Restaurant in the low ceiling in the surf club is very successful. People don't really look at it, but now they understand, wow, all the seating that you had there up against the wall, it looks towards the room itself. It makes you welcoming when you enter the space. It is the simple things in life that make you feel better and create the value that we also desire. And that's why historically, our product, whether it's our apartments or our condos, they sell for the highest price per foot. And they're arguably not, I'm not in the best location on Palazzo del Sol and Palazzo della
Right.
Luna. I'm by the ferry.
Right.
I'm not even not by the beach club. I'm facing the wrong way. I'm looking at the ships come in and out. Six Residences now selling for more money with Related. I'm by the ferry. I'm between the ferry and the oil tanks. Go figure.
So Kobe, this is very insightful. You've taken a mindset, and it's thinking about the other person, it's hospitality, it's serving other people, and putting yourself in their shoes. And that's really important in business, is thinking about what's in it for the other person. So not thinking about yourself, not thinking about your own designs, but thinking about good design for the end user, for the resident,
Yes.
for the buyer, for
Yes.
the owner.
Yes.
And clearly you've been very successful doing that. Let's go back to that first job, Lincoln Road. What was that like? And then what were some of the first projects that you worked on?
What happens is that working in the Caribbean in the late 80s, early 90s, we had beepers. But the beepers only worked in Miami. They did not work in St. Lucia or Grenada or Bahamas.
I can only imagine working in the Caribbean back then. It was must have been the dark ages compared to even now, which is still challenging, but okay, go.
Correct. So what we would do is we would do our resorts, which were all-inclusive resorts. And the reason they're all-inclusive, because if you get off the property, there was a lot of violence back then. There's drugs, people walking around with machetes.
Wow.
They want to steal your money, or they choppy your arms. It was a problem in Jamaica, in St. Lucia, and other locations. So what we did is we did all-inclusive resorts and hotels so that you can stay on the property and have a great experience. And to build in the Caribbean back then, we used fax paper. It was thermo fax paper. And we used Federal Express. And we would fly from Miami to San Juan, Puerto Rico, and then take a smaller airplane to St. Lucia or Grenada or Turks and Caicos or wherever, Bahamas, and that's where we would work. And that experience of
What years was
1988 until 1994, we were building a lot in the Caribbean. And we did resorts in St. Lucia. We did resorts in Grenada, Turks and Caicos, in the Bahamas, San Salvador, Eleuthera, Paradise Island.
What was financing like back then? Capitalizing these projects. Even today, it's hard to capitalize projects in the Caribbean. So back then,
So capitalization of the projects was different from location to location. The first project, I'll give you an example, in Grenada, was where the airport strip is on the southern part of Grenada. It's called Point Celine.
Okay.
And the family that owned the southern tip was the Taylor family from the days of the colonial days. And Leon Taylor, who's one of the smart ones in the family, tall, elegant individual, went to school and studied in Canada plate tectonics. And so he comes back after the Russians who financed the airport strip in Grenada, where the East Germans back then, the wall was not down, drew the plans, and the Cubans were the labor. They built it. The Americans waited for them to finish the whole airport strip. Finish the whole airport strip, and when you finish it and you put lights on it, that's when Ronald Reagan said, okay, I'm going to land there because potentially the communism were building an airport strip close to Venezuela and South America, right? Same story as today.
Right.
Why the current administration goes into Caracas and picks up the individual who allegedly controls the country. Ronald Reagan waited for them to finish. So when they finished, getting back to your financing question, Leon Taylor shows up and goes, here's my title to my land. He goes, great. The communists don't care about titles. They don't care about land ownership.
Right.
They're just going to build the airport strip. And that's what they did on his land. But, so the World Bank said, you know what, Mr. Taylor, we're not going to give you any, we're not going to give you the land back. We have an airport strip on it. Arguably making a lot of money with this airport strip, now more so than ever before. But, Mr. Taylor, what we'll do is we'll give you money. And you can go to the World Bank and get a loan and build your hotel, which will have a cash flow. And he hired us as architects. And that was it. So that's how that was financed. Other projects we would do, like Club Med resorts, had financing. Back then it was the Trigonal family.
Okay.
And they had private equity investors, et cetera, and they showed a return on the investment. Later on, it became, the publicly traded company,
Were these all cash? Were there bank financing, construction loans back then?
All, both.
Okay.
Yeah. And the contractors, like the project we did in St. Lucia between the Pitons with a Brazilian company called Andrade Gutierrez, which is a big company. This is going back to 1980s, 1990s, from Belo Horizonte. They built the Jalousie Plantation, which now became the Viceroy, between the Pitons in St. Lucia. That's what, even today, I'm working in Grenada on a hotel called Spice Island Resort. That's where a lot of English folks go, where they have breaks for 30 days at a time. Wow. And they pay 1,000 euros and more per room, per day, per night. And so those kind of resorts and hotels we have been doing in the Caribbean. And those resorts are designed not only to give you a good quality of life, to feel the environment. When you go to St. Lucia, you have a certain environment. When you go to Grenada, I can pick up on the Spice Island History and Resort. And they can have Spice Island, with spices, massages, and therapies. I can take you and give you a thalassotherapy spineless sport in St. Lucia. You need to make it vernacular to the community. That's why the environmental design degree is so critical, right? If I take you, you want to feel unique to that location, right? We built a hotel in Da Nang, Vietnam. It's different than building in Hanoi, right? Or in Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City, as they called it, right? And especially in 1994 and 1995, when back then it was Bill Clinton said, okay, let's go. And we said, okay, let's go. And we're building a hotel as we were a British firm, but I was American, passport across from the Russian embassy in Da Nang. Those are the kind of things that you have to start to take into consideration into your designs. We couldn't have any windows facing that direction. Yet, people who come to Vietnam, they want us in Da Nang. That's where the big beach is. That's where the United States Army landed, right? That's where they did their whole landing in the movie that you see. What is it called in Vietnam? Apocalypse Now.
Apocalypse Now.
And he comes out and he goes,
My
okay,
dad was in Vietnam.
you can surf here. The beach is safe for surfing. And the guy brings his surfboard, right?
Yep.
That's the American mentality, right? And that kind of Americana or cavalier thought process existed in my DNA coming from Minnesota. So when we sat around the room and said, okay, who's going to go to Vietnam? I said, okay, I'll go. There was no flights to Vietnam. I would fly from there to France. The developer was in France. We'd jump together and fly from Paris to Hanoi. And then you see the vibe and you need to feel it. And Hanoi is a beautiful French colonial city. Da Nang is a beautiful environmental. And even today you go there and it's where all the hotels and resorts are. So you need to be there and not only service or want to service your friends and your family and your clients. You need to look and listen and hear them. You know, that's why God gave us 2 ears, hopefully 2 ears, to listen. 2 eyes, hopefully, so we can watch. 2 nostrils, so we can breathe and give some air to our brain. You know, a mouth, so we can drink, we can eat, and God willing, hardly ever talk.
Yeah.
Listen. The more you can
Watch.
listen, yes, sir.
Pay attention.
That's where you
Yeah.
can become successful.
That's listening, paying attention, reading the room, picking up on little mannerisms. If you listen to people enough, they'll tell you what they want. They'll tell you who they are. They'll tell you what motivates them, what their desires are. And if you can take that, package it into something, you can have success and be more successful.
And that's what we do. We do it today. You know, the Raleigh, the Shell Bay, the Shelbourne, the Ritz, all of those solutions which mix hospitality and resort with new residences adjacent to them, next to them, connected to them, disconnected from them. That's what people like and appreciate. And it's not just in luxury. We do it in here on the river. We do it in workforce housing that we do. We've done affordable housing. When you come in Overtown, out of the restaurant Red Rooster, you see across the street there's a beautiful building. And I'm standing outside, you know, waiting to my wife to come out. And this guy's saying, oh, it's so nice here. It's so beautiful. I want to live here. You can't. Why can't you live here? I'm going to buy a unit. No, you can't buy a unit. I want to rent it. You can't rent it. It is affordable housing, subsidized by the state of Florida. And it's called the Lyric Plaza. But it's designed with a linear park adjacent to the historic Lyric Theater, right, with its historic black culture. And then the building is there, and it has townhouses, and it makes you feel like, wow, this is a real nice community, and you want to live there. And that's what we think about.
You've designed projects valued at over $120 billion, over $100 billion throughout your career. You've worked in the Middle East, you've worked in the Caribbean, you've worked in Asia, you've worked all over the world. Let's bring it back to Miami back in the 90s. Miami today is the place to be. This is the center of the universe, real estate growth. We just had Mark Zuckerberg move here, Larry Page, the Google co-founders. What was it like in the mid-90s and when you started your firm in 1996?
The way you're asking the question is a very important way, because how old are you now?
40.
I'm 63. When I came here, I was 25. And people who came between 25 and 35, the people who bought here in the early 90s were important people. All the models were here being photographed. Gianni Versace had a beautiful home. All kinds of players. Madonna. Chris Pacillo was making killing with his clubs. All of these individuals were starting out. Romero Brito, I did his gallery when he first started on Lincoln Road.
Wow.
Mickey Grandene was starting out at a little place, Casa Tua.
Wow.
And what happened is that, and they're all the grinders, right?
Grinders.
Yeah. And what I'm seeing is that if Gianni Versace would have lived, it would have been even more culturally progressive. What happens in life is that back then, people who came here go, wow, this is great, so great. They loved it. And today, people are coming here and they're going, wow, this is so great. But for different upgraded versions and visions.
Yeah.
Today, we have, I'll give you perspective. When I came here in 1988, I came from Minneapolis, Minnesota. We didn't have a Walgreens in Miami Beach. We didn't have a movie theater in Miami Beach. We didn't have a triple net lease tenants in Miami Beach because there was no cash flow. The people who came to Miami back then were a bunch of folks from the Northeast, generally speaking, on a fixed income,
Right.
and they had no money. So they have no money for movies. They have no money to go to Walgreens and
Yeah.
CVS and Target.
Tourists. So these were tourists coming down from the Northeast?
All tourists with no money.
Okay. Wow.
Sunny Isles Beach, we did the same thing. When we created Sunny Isles Beach in 1994, created the code, it was a lot of French Canadians who would come down on a very limited money, and they would stay in their little homes, little apartments, and spend very little money and go back. There used to be bumper stickers on cars. They used to say, happiness. Happiness is a Canadian going back home with a New Yorker under each arm. Those were bumper stickers
Wow.
that you still remember today.
Yeah.
But today, the people who come here, they see the culture and they see the potential. And in the lower 48, there's no better place to live. From just an environment. Lower 48, subtropical weather, from Orlando to Sarasota, to Fort Myers, to St. Pete, to Tampa, to Naples, to Satellite Beach, which is being activated like never before, Daytona Beach, West Palm Beach. I'm not even talking about Palm Beach. I'm talking about West Palm Beach, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking about Hollywood and Hallandale. I haven't even touched Fort Lauderdale on the river or on the beach. And we did the Four Seasons in Fort Lauderdale, and we just finished the Celine condominium in Fort Lauderdale, and we're working on the next phase. And I can tell you what I'm observing is that people now, more so than ever before, have discovered this subtropical peninsula called Florida in the lower 48, where it's pro-business and it's pro-education and it's pro-science and it's pro all these things that make civilization grow. And when you study history and architecture, and you say, why did Milan become such a great city? Why did Florence become such a great city? Why did Paris become? They weren't necessarily all, they were located in the right place at the right time.
Right.
Florida is located in the right place at the right time, but these things take time. I live in a house that was built 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. The surf club, the members club that we made part of the hotel, the Four Seasons, was built 100 years ago. The Cadillac, which we restored as a hotel, was built 80 years ago. The Caribbean condominium, which we used the historic building as our lobby prelude to the new condo, was built also 80 years ago. So these things that we are talking about, they take decades in time for people to appreciate, because obviously somebody had a vision when they built here 100 years ago, and they built the surf club or
Yep.
Indian Creek Residences or the marina in Bell Harbor or even the courthouse on Flagler. When you look at it and the architecture and the materiality with the basement that was built 100, 120 years ago. People had a vision back then with the inspiration, but they didn't have the counts, the numbers.
Right.
With this technology, the iPhones that we have, people sitting in Eastern Europe, Moldova, Romania, wherever they are, say, oh, wow, come on, honey, I want to go live in Sunny Isles Beach. So when we thought that the French Canadians were going to come, the Eastern Europeans came, Russians. And they took their apartments, big apartments, and they habitate that area, and they make their community. We had the Cubans come when I came here in 1980, in the 1980s, right? They became an anchor to the community, which was different than the Cubans who came in the 60s. And when you start to understand people, and then you can cater to them on who they are, because if my client is a Cuban family that came in the 80s. It's different than the Cuban family that came in the 60s.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I deal with the Russians in Sochi, Russia, they're different than the Russians that I would deal with in Tambov or Kaluga, other cities, or in St. Pete, Russia, not Florida.
Yeah.
What happens then is that, same thing in Florida. Folks who live in Fort Lauderdale and desire spaces in Fort Lauderdale are different than folks in Palm Beach.
Yeah.
People-
Different in Miami.
Different than Miami, different than Fort Myers. And so everybody has their own location that they so desire, their home that makes them feel comfortable, that fits in. And our job is to, like you said, listen and observe and learn and give them a better product. And if you can give people a better product, they're willing to pay for it a little bit more. And that translates to the Gianni Versace's back in the 80s and 90s. And it translates to the folks who are buying today. Many people are coming back home. You know, Bezos and so forth, they used to live here.
That's right.
And they see this as the potential, not what it is today, but what it will become in the next generation or two.
As real estate developers, we have to predict where the growth is happening, where a neighborhood is turning. Because we have to buy land, we have to entitle it. It's a whole process. And if you come into a neighborhood that's already built out, prices are going to be high. Value has been created. What are some of the hot neighborhoods today that were not so hot in the early days? That people would be surprised that maybe south of Fifth and some others were not Surfside, were not the it neighborhoods, and then they turned. And what made them turn? What were some of the turning points for them?
I think that my observation is, when I see that, is I've always stepped into neighborhoods which were not recognized as the it neighborhoods, as you said. I designed a surf club originally in 2012, before there was anything there, with a developer that was not from Florida. And other clients of mine would call me up and go, nah, you're never gonna be successful in Surfside. Okay, why not? It's the butthole of Bell Harbor, as we nicknamed it. Oh, okay, fine. And when you looked in retrospect upon it, you know, the comps were very weak in Surfside. And the only project that were going ahead was the surf club. Chateau was going ahead with the Fendi name. But the surf club became very, very successful because we listen to what the end clients want and we listen to what the community wants. So we preserved a historic structure.
What made it such a hit? Was it the name? Was it the beach? What created the buzz for it to catch traction if it was in the butthole of Bal Harbor?
What created the value and made, when you look at the numbers even today, right? The St. Regis doesn't get the numbers that the surf club does. And the reason for that is that you're able to listen to what the end client wants and what the community wants. And I'll be very specific there. When we did the design for the surf club in 2012, we looked at it and somebody decided that there was a members club. It was 120 members or so, and they wanted to save money because they couldn't afford to maintain the structure anymore. So they designated it historic. All the land where the cabanas are and the original building, they designated historic. And once they got their designation, they didn't get the tax credit because it was a private club. And so when I went to the city, the manager, Roger Carlton was his name, he was the manager also in Miami Beach. He said, listen, Kobi, if you give me my Jules Palms that I want, I'll be very happy because it's going to tie me as a continuation to Bell Harbor. And your issue in life, Kobi, will be the historic preservation because they designated the building and the site historic.
When you hear that as a developer, you get nervous.
Well, the developer didn't come with me because he's never developed before. He bought the leftover units during the market crash in Capri. That's how we got to know each other. And
Fort partners.
Nadim, Roberto Celea, Jay Coriati, and so forth. They all were in the beginning there, and they saw what we did at Capri, where we preserved a historic building by Igor Polovetsky. We built a new building and another shorter building next to it along the water. And the land was very tight, and we couldn't fit the parking, so we buried it all underneath, right? We made a basement parking and let the buildings rise out. And that's how we maximize the value, and that's how we also maximize the street ends. Instead of having structures blocking the water, the neighbors can then walk over there and go, oh, isn't it nice? I can go look at the water, I can look at the sunset. The neighbors came and supported us. Same thing at the surf club.
Was Four Seasons always going to be the brand? How did Four Seasons get involved?
Four Seasons did not come in until the year 14,
Okay.
13. The reason is that nobody knew what you can get. So first we went to the Historic Preservation Board, and they said, "Oh, it's so nice of you to restore and preserve the historic building," and they liked it very much. And there was cabanas on the ocean where Winston Churchill used to paint.
Wow.
When you look at the photograph, you see Winston with his cigar, watercoloring during World War II. And the ocean is right there. But what happened is the United States Army Corps of Engineers came and said, hey, we want to build dunes and a beach walk to protect the buildings. So they built the dune, and then pretty soon from the cabanas, you can't see the ocean. You're too far away. So we told the historic preservation members at Miami-Dade County, we'd like to take the cabanas, or wooden cabanas, and move them closer to the ocean so Winston can see the water again. Well, that left a dead space from the cabanas and behind them to Collins Avenue, and that's where they gave us the new tower, which is that curved tower. When you drive north on Collins Avenue, it curves in,
Yep.
the south tower. And the reason it curves is so when you're driving north, you see the historic structure. You don't want to block it. You want to appeal to it. So it opens up like a wing.
Kobi, one of your superpowers is working with the city, working with the developers, thinking about the end users and the buyers to get these projects approved. And before we started filming, we were talking about logic and common sense. It's very important in what you do, in helping build and design our community today. What have been some of your favorite projects that you started in the beginning, designed, improved the density, improved what could be built there, working with the government officials throughout Miami that you're most proud about or that stand out in your mind?
I think that the Four Seasons in Fort Lauderdale is a very good solution. Mm-hmm. How it basically sits as a building surrounded by landscaping with multiple entries. You walk by, you drive by, you don't see a parking garage in front of you like the other buildings. I think that if the surf club is highly successful, but the surf club DNA came from the buildings that we did before. We did the projects, if you will, the Caribbean condominium, where you preserve the historic building and you come into it, and people value the new structure because they appreciate the old one. We did the same thing in the Cadillac Hotel. We did the same thing in many projects. We did the same thing at the surf club. And at the same time, those projects became successful over time for no other reason than people came in there and word of mouth said, oh, this is great. I love it here. And that's what happened. So I'm proud of those.
Let's talk about the deals. Let's talk about properties, developments, projects. It's a long process, and different sites, different hotels, they have different ownerships over the years. The Raleigh Rosewood just changed hands. Nala Capital just bought it from Michael Schvo. What was that deal like in the beginning? You mentioned you've looked at designs for previous owners. Let's talk about the history of the Raleigh and your involvement.
The Raleigh was previously owned by Tommy.
Tommy Hilfiger.
Yeah. And other folks have looked at it. I've looked at it for other big developers in the community. And when they said, oh, come over, let's take a look at the site. We walked the site, and I've always said to them, because there was an approval done on it before for cabanas, casitas, which were 2-3 floors on the ocean along the beach walk. And when Michael came along, Michael said, "What do you think we can do here?" I said, "We can, if you have money," which he said he did, and if you can assemble the Raleigh with the Richmond and the South Seas
Right.
to the south, which are shorter structures, and then the Raleigh steps back. They were done by the same architect.
Okay.
And so what he did, the shorter buildings, he put them along Collins Avenue, and then the taller one, he set it back. Even the Shelbourne to the north was done by Morris Lapidus. He set, by Igor Polovetsky, he set it back even more. What the idea was to create a bigger front yard of the building as it's set back from the street. You see it. Wow. How nice is that, right? So when I spoke to Michael, I said, "Michael, let us buy the properties next door, demolish the additions that were put on the back over the past 30, 40, 50 years, which were basically slumlord tenement housing.
Yeah.
Behind the Richmond and South Seas. Let's restore the Richmond and South Seas, restore the Raleigh to its original glory, and then ask the city for a new tower in the Bell, which is 200 feet. And for that, we needed to go to the city.
Was it so? 200 feet wasn't allowed at the time.
No, the highest you could do is the height of the existing building, which is about 75. What we did is we did what you and I have been talking about, which is to go to the city and to the Historic Preservation Board and to the community and say, "Look, let us take that square footage of the tenement housing, demolish it all, and put a new towerette on the ocean, closer to the ocean, so that when you walk along the beach walk, you can see the historic Raleigh." Because right now you disengage from it and you build casitas along the ocean, you're even more disengaged. Great, we love it. Good idea.
Was it like that in the beginning?
Yes.
At the first meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's how it's made. And then Michael went ahead and he bought the Richmond and the South Seas and assembled them all, which was not an easy, exercise. But a lot of good came out of it. Like the family that owned one of the buildings was at the end of their life, a husband and wife, and they took all the money and they said to Michael, "Michael, we're giving it all to University of Miami
Wow.
for the business school."
Amazing. Great story.
So there's good that comes out of it.
And it's good for the community. It re-gentrifies and brings life to the neighborhood.
And it's good also for the Raleigh. The Raleigh now stands alone. All the additions and encumbrance that were done to it were removed, and likewise from the Richmond and the South Seas. And then the building, the new tower, is set back so that you can walk along the street and experience the historic buildings and feel more in touch with them. And so that's what we did on the Raleigh. That's what we did, and we took that text amendment with the design to the city staff and to the preservationists, and they approved it.
How long was that process? From start to finish?
6 to 12 months.
Okay. That's not bad.
No. But then once we got the text amendment, then, different folks all come in, right? Oh, let's not do one tower. Let's do 2 towers. Let's do a tower that steps down. Everybody has ideas.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you have to follow the logic. The logic was always simple. One single standalone tower in the back where you can come through the historic lobby of the Raleigh and experience it.
And what's the density? What density did you achieve? How many residential units? How many hotel rooms? If you know, remember. off the top of
Approximately
your
the
head.
existing hotel rooms that exist in the Raleigh right now,
It's like 60 hotel rooms.
70.
Si-
And then the new tower, it's not about the quantity of the
Yeah.
units because the units are quite large.
It was the FAR.
It was the square footage.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. And so once we got that tower approved, we were able to come back and work on that and refine it and modify it and continue the craftsmanship. And that's the deal. The deal was that that individual was able to assemble the adjacent properties. And also it improved his pro forma because he no longer had to explain, oh, I have this, low-income housing next door to me on the ocean.
Right.
Which is not making any money. And the walls are 10 feet apart. They had 5-foot setback for one property, another 5-foot. They were looking into each other. It was ridiculous.
Pro forma for the viewers listening is your underwriting.
Yes, sir.
Is your budget.
Yes.
So as a developer, there's cost of the land, there's cost to build, there's soft costs, then there's your revenue, how much you can sell for. So all of this math and calculus goes into designing a project.
And by creating the value, then you can sell it. Not only at Rosewood Raleigh, but at Auberge Shore Club, at the Ritz Sangamore. You can sell it for a good price that then gives you the return on the investment.
Let's talk about the Shore Club.
Okay.
Your history with the Shore Club, Steve Witkoff, building, designing, selling. How did that deal come about?
So what happened is that there was a previous group there, and
What year was this?
Monroe Capital had it with Zeal, and Zeal flew me up to New
I think
York.
I read 2013, maybe 2012.
I think you're right. And they flew me up to New York, and they said, "Oh, Kobe, you know, what do you think we should do here?" And what they were doing is there was an existing Chipperfield building, and so that Chipperfield building was located on the site where I thought was not the highest and best use for the property, from an architectural, from historic preservation, from a neighborhood, from a quality of life. It wasn't the best solution for the site, but it was built. And they were trying to work with the existing building. And I said, you should demolish the existing building. It's not historic. You should demolish it. Why not demolish it? You can do better. And I came up to New York, and I met with them at that point, and they said, no, Kobe, we don't agree. We're going to go with the design that we have. And they moved on. And as time had it, 5 years later, Witkoff ends up with the property, with Monroe. And Stevie asked me the same question, just like Michael did.
It ends up with the property.
Yes, sir.
How did he end up with the property? Did he buy into the deal? Did he partner with them?
I don't know.
Okay.
That I don't know. So what happened is that while he was looking at it, he said, Kobe, what would you do? Right? And I told Steve, who's a dear friend, and I have deep respect for him. Professionally, personally, I think that
Incredible person.
Yes.
Business person. Yep.
more so now than ever before, I see you see people's potential come
Yep.
to glory. And he asked me, what would you do, Kobe? And I told him the same thing. I would demolish the existing Chipperfield building and build new. And this is what I would do. He said, well, how do you know you can get, everybody's concerned, right, forward. So we got on back then it was COVID.
Yeah, okay.
So we had a Zoom call with the city staff and the head of planning and zoning, and she and he said, yeah, what you're showing us makes sense. You're going to demolish you're going to preserve and restore the Shore Club and the Cromwell, which was built before the Shore Club, which faces Satai, and you're going to make the Cromwell the residential entrance to your new tower. Mm-hmm. And we like that because it gives us the restoration and rebuilding of the Cromwell and the Shore Club. We love it.
Amazing.
And we like the new tower because it meets the setbacks and it meets the FAR, and it's an
Did
as
you
of
have to
right.
ask for more density?
No, just
Within the framework.
as of right.
As of right. Okay.
Yeah, no favors, no. Right. So then, I was facing with a little dilemma there. I'm demolishing a building which Chipperfield was up to be a Pritzker.
Okay.
So I needed some support. So we brought Mr. Robert Stern in, and I think it helped to tell the story of the desire or the demand at that point in time to demolish that structure. And that's what we did. And once it was gone, people understood the vision of the potential for the preservation and restoration of the Cromwell and the Shore Club and what the site can actually be like from a value standpoint. And it has sold quite well.
Kobe's projects. Kobe, you have a reputation. Your designs sell for some of the highest price per square foot in the market. And an example, at the Shore Club, the penthouse is in contract for a huge number, over $100 million.
Look, we did the same thing in the Sagamore, right? every site has a story like that. At the Sagamore, I get a phone call on a Sunday to come from the beach. I came with shorts and T-shirt and flip-flops to meet Daisy and Paul Conovos, who are the partners at the Ritz and at the club level. And it just shows you how life leads you into almost like a movie set that sets you up. And so Paul, you know, he's busy, and Daisy wanted to come and meet me. And she goes, "What would you do here?" Right? And I don't like to tell people unless they ask me, because if they ask, then their intent is to understand why.
Understand.
And I said to her, "You see, next door is a building called the Sagamore, and in the back they built a building 5 stories high many years ago. But if you were to go to speak to your neighbor, you can, between the Sagamore and the Ritz, there's a property line where both parties use it as garbage and trash. That should be your spine of life. And you should place the available square footage that you have and they have and put a new towerette right there on the ocean." And she goes, "Oh, that's an interesting thought. Why didn't anybody do that before?" I said, "I don't know. Maybe they didn't go talk to their neighbors. Maybe the neighbors were there." And she goes, "Okay." And it's true. The neighbors were different, and it was different folks. And the Ben Joseph family bought it. And it just so happened when she went and met with them, she went to high school with them.
Wow.
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 And that allowed Daisy and the Ben Joseph family to get together with Diego Lowenstein and look at a master plan that combines the whole thing and provides a bigger beachfront and a bigger access, and being able to walk along the ocean and seeing the beautiful historic buildings in a more clear understanding, and not only on Collins Avenue. So we went to the city, to the historic preservationists, and said, "Look, you know, we're going to take the bad area, we're going to carve it up and make it nice, and we're going to set the building in the open negative space between the historic buildings so you can see them more. You can walk along the beachfront and appreciate the architecture." And they like that. So we got that project approved. And that was the story. But them coming together for a better quality, for a better job, for a better design, it was critical.
What are you working on now that you're excited about? Looking to the future, you've had 3 decades in Miami with Kobi Karp, your firm. Where do you think Miami is going, and what are you working on? What's exciting you now?
I think I've been living here since 1988. Let's say right now it's, 2026? So I've been living here almost decades. I think that the past 30 years have been a prelude to what the potential will be in the next 30 years, based on my observation, the history. When you look at what people built in Florida 100 years ago, or what their vision was, and you take that and interpolate it, faster technology, abilities, quantity of people coming here,
Mobility, wealth migration.
mobility, wealth migration. It used to be, just South Americans.
Right, yeah.
It used to be, just New Yorkers. No. Now it's Chicago, Northern California, Southern California. Every state, whether it's quality of life, first, foremost, taxes, second, quality of health and medicine is better. Cleveland Clinic is here. Services to United States of America, Southern Command is here. Satellite Beach with Elon Musk, what it's becoming, and has not been since NASA was operating it. The potential for the quality of life is immense here, which draws the next generation. Because as much as I love you, you're in your 40s already, and I'm in my 60s, we have already started down our path. The next generation, in their late teens, in their 20s, in their 30s, that is the next energy flow of thought and creativity. And that is really the future of Florida, which for me is very inspiring and very unique. I can't think of another location in the lower 48 like the state of Florida. I can't think of another location in the Western civilization like Florida. That's why we're getting people from Western Europe and London and Paris. I can't think of around the world because now I work in Abu Dhabi and Dubai for 20 years. I used to fly through Europe to get there. Now, no, come on, Kobe, get on Emirates direct.
Yep.
I can't tell you what kind of a pleasure that is. And now it's starting the airlines from the Far East.
Yep.
And we never had that. When I go to Abu Dhabi and Dubai, which we have built over the past 20 years, and I see the Etihad and Emirates being the center of transportation, I see us here being the center again. And I'll give you an example. I work for Etihad Airlines, I work for San Diego Zoo and El Ain, and what they did is they became the core. I'm seeing airlines coming here now and being the core to service South and Central America. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing the potential for viability and visibility and accessibility here in Florida so eloquent and elegant, more so than ever before, that it's really inspirational. I just hope that the people who come here will value the values that we had when it was created 100 years ago during the Flagler and
The pro-business, the safety
you said it.
that we have.
Yes, sir.
We're so welcoming here
Yes, sir.
in Florida. And that's attracting people from all over the country, from other states, and from all over the world.
Because when you are not, and I won't talk about New York or anywhere, or Minneapolis where I grew up, I'll talk about Miami. When I came here in 1988, which was the late 80s, it was not nice. And the reason it was not nice is because the government let it go in the early 80s, in the 70s, and even the late 60s to go down a path that it did not before. When Morris Lapidus, who's a dear friend and a great architect, built a Fontainebleau and Lincoln Road.
We need to. Okay.
Built the Fontainebleau in the Eden Rock. That is inspiration in the early 60s. They were built in 1962 when I was born. So they were designed in the 1960, right? It takes a while for the building to come. It's like pregnancy. It takes 9 months for the baby to come out. Now, Morris Lapidus built those buildings, but since then, in the late 60s, early 70s, late 70s, early 80s, it went down. When I came here, it was Miami Vice's Scarface days. There were people sleeping on the street. The drugs was the cash flow of how people built buildings. It's a public record.
This was, yep.
And then it started to rejuvenate. The next generation with the models and the actors had the next vision. I think that's where we are today. I just hope that the people who come here, like you said, like you're from South Korea, not North Korea, populate this community.
Yep.
It's like South Vietnam, populate and come together as a common people. I think it's so critical for people to understand what made United States great, because we're all immigrant. I'm an immigrant.
We're all immigrants.
You're an immigrant. He's an immigrant. If not, his parents are immigrants. When you come to, I always like to come to a meeting and say, whoever was not born in Florida, please raise your hand. 80% of the people raised their hand.
Yeah.
This is what we are. And so what we have created here thus far has been a prelude to the production or the end use that we can, God willing, have here in the next 30 years. And you really need to protect it. Because if you don't protect it, it will die. It will fly away. And if you ever come to my office, I have a picture on my wall of all these cast of characters that I met over the decades. And I have one picture with Gorbachev from the 1990s. But when he knocked down that wall, he let the people flow together. and be together and work together.
For those listening and those coming to Florida, and I moved here in 2020 to Florida, it's important to remember why everyone is coming here and to embrace and to support the way that Florida is run and operated. We have a balanced budget. We have a small government. We have low regulation. We have no state income taxes. We are pro-business. Florida is one of the best places to start a business. We welcome people. So those listening, if you're coming from other states, you're coming from other parts of the world, it's important to remember why Florida is so great. The growth, the commerce, the economy is booming, and to keep that fabric together so that we can thrive for the next 30 years. Kobi, you've been here for nearly 4 decades. You've played the long game. You've mastered the long game. What advice do you have for those listening, those starting in their careers, those in the middle of their careers, that to help them play the long game, to have longevity, to have success over the long run, and not just be here today and gone tomorrow?
Take care of yourself personally. The person you need to take care of is yourself, first and foremost, so that you can stay healthy.
Health is wealth.
Don't drink a lot. Don't smoke a lot. Don't drive fast a lot. Control your desires and stay focused on making yourself, the me, myself, and I, a better person. A better person for yourself. Healthier, cleaner, and in turn, then you can be a better person for your family, for your friends, for your community. I like what I do. I love what I do. I'm only good at it because I can service the community and the people around me, including my clients. But that comes because I like to service my kids, my parents, my wife, who has been by me for decades. You know, relationships with people, relationship with friends and family is what I strive to do. And I'll give you an example. We used to be in a community where elderly used to live with the same house nearby, the children. So the children saw the elderly and their wisdom, while the parents were there, they helped, they pushed, they worked. It's important, I think, for you as an individual, if you're young, to hang out and spend time, quality time, with elderly. That's how I learned the most, the fastest, and I saw the most from the wisest in the best way. I think that your friends are good, but I think if you can hang out and study and understand and work with and live, work, and educate yourself from elderly, the next generation, you'll be more advanced. And you'll appreciate your abilities better. That's what happened to me. I think that if you give yourself that opportunity to step away from your friends and look onto the next generation, whether it's in your family, your friends, people you work with. If you're able, when I was in my 20s and teens, 30s, I always worked with folks who were in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. I can tell you names of individuals who are no longer here with me, who were my teachers, they put me in business. And I think that as an individual in my teens, in my 20s, my 30s, be with your friends and family, but always look for the generation that's about to leave, the generation that's older, elderly. I think it's so critical for your improvement. And I think that really makes the next generation here stronger and better and wiser.
Kobi Karp, thank you for joining the long game.
Thanks
It's been
for
a pleasure.
having me. You're a good man.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.